Have you ever run into the situation where your website forms stop working or website forms on your client site stop working and you don't notice or realize it until it's too late and you've potentially lost out on a bunch of leads? Well, I've run into the same situation and I found a really, really good solution for how to automate the entire process of testing website forms out on a schedule, on a regular basis, so that if something is wrong with the form, you'll at least get a notification, an email letting you know that something is wrong with the form and you can go in and investigate. So without further ado, let me jump into the video here. I'm going to show you the process. So for this process, we're going to use a tool called ZeroWork. If you didn't get in on the AppSumo lifetime deal, the pricing isn't too bad. I mean, you're at $15 per month for 20 task bots. Well, you only need one task bot for every form that you need to run. So you're looking at, if you're doing this for one task bot per client, you got 20 clients for 15 bucks. What I'm going to show you, you could easily resell this for 30 bucks a month is like on the low end, I think would be very reasonable. You're saving somebody a dollar a day to make sure that their forms are always going to be working. So I think it's still a great value, and you can still definitely make it work with the current pricing here. If you want to look at other options, and AppSumo also has a bunch of these types of tools available all the time. Like I've seen, this is probably like the third one that I've seen. Just keep an eye out for RPA tools. RPA is basically the category of tool that this is. I think it stands for something like Robotic Process Automation or something like that. So basically what ZeroWork does and what differentiates it from a tool like Zapier is that ZeroWork will actually open up a browser and it'll start performing actions inside of the browser. ZeroWork or any RPA tools are good for automating things where you need somebody to sort of physically do something, but you want to automate that process. All right, so before we get started, you're going to need one other tool, which is going to be this browser extension here called Copy CSS Selector. Just Google search Copy CSS Selector, you'll find it. You'll see the little clover icon as well. Install it, I'll show you how to use it in this video. So for this video, we're going to be looking at this website here, and we're going to be automating the process of filling out this quote request form on this website. Now this is a multi-step form, so I'm using this as an example because it is more of a complex example. For most forms, I mean, it's just a single step. There's a few fields, super quick and easy to do it. So I'm going to do it with this because it's a little bit more complicated, and I'll show you the process. It's basically the same thing, just faster if you have a simpler form. All right, so let's jump into ZeroWork and I'll show you the workflow here. So in ZeroWork, once you're logged into this dashboard, you just click on Create New Taskbot, and it's going to jump you into the editor. I've got this taskbot already set up here. Now, it looks complicated. Don't let that faze you. It's actually super simple. You'll see by the icons here that it's basically the same actions being performed multiple times. There's just a lot of form fields. Every one of these pairs here that you see is one form field being filled out. And so there's just a lot of form fields, and that's why there's so many steps, but this could be like far simpler, okay? But let's just get started. I'll show you the process here. So the first step here, you're gonna use an open link block here. So you just click on it or drag it onto the page like this, and you're going to put in the URL of the page you want to visit. In this case, it's going to be the quote request page here. Once that page is opened, we're going to need to click, the bot is going to need to click into the first name field and then type in a name. So that's what this block is here. It's basically a click web element block, and we're going to drag it into the page, and then we're just going to need to use a CSS selector to select that first field. Now this is where that Chrome extension comes in handy. What we're going to do is we're going to use that Chrome extension. We're just going to right click in the field that we want to select, and we're going to click on Copy CSS Selector, and you'll see that it highlights that field to let you know that it's selected that. And now if we go into this click first name field box, you'll see that if I paste, that's from my clipboard here, you'll see that it's the exact same selector that it used, right? So it's input and then the ID of that field name. And so you just put in that CSS selector, click save, and then the next thing that we're going to need it to do is we're going to need it to type some text. So we're going to go to it where it says insert text or data, and we're going to drag that block in, and all we're going to do is just connect them together like this. And then that's going to basically connect all these blocks in a sequence, right? So the open the URL, and then you're going to connect it to this first step, which is click the field, and then you're going to connect that to the type text box, which is going to just type some text. In this case here, we're just going to put in the text here, Propel. Then we're going to go to the last name field, right? So that we're going to do the same thing here. Right click, copy CSS selector, drag in a click web element block, put in that CSS selector here, and then the next block is going to be a type text. Well, it's actually input text or data. I'm just going to call it type text block, and we're going to put in team in here. So that's going to go into the last name field and type team. And we're literally just doing this over and over again. We're going into email, copy CSS selector, and this is going to be email field, and then we're going to type in an email address. We're going to go to phone number, type in a phone number, click on address, type in an address, and we're going to do that for a lot of these. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these because you guys kind of get the idea here. It's pretty, it's pretty simple. It just takes time to kind of right click, paste the selector, type in the text that you want, and then you just connect all these blocks in sequence like this. I just try to organize it. These are basically the three. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to this form. I'm going to talk about this step here because this step is the next step that I want to show you here. So what we want to do here is when we get to the postal code field, which is this last field, we need to click on this next button. Now, one of the reasons why we even went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out how can we avoid, or how can we detect problems with this, with forms like these, is because on this particular site, the form was actually missing buttons down here. And so now that can happen through things like CSS updates from plugins and things like that that could potentially break the form. So what I did in here is we just doing a check here to see that check, that next button is actually available. So how do we do that? We're going to use a check web element block here, and I'm just going to drag it here to show you what it looks like. All we're going to do is we're going to paste the CSS selector of that element. So we're going to right click, copy CSS selector, and we're going to put that in here. And we're going to check this box that says that the element has to be visible on the screen. Because remember, the button could be in the HTML, but it could not be visible. And basically, we want to make sure that it is visible so that a user can actually click on it, right? If we don't select this and the button is in the HTML, the bot is going to be able to find it in the HTML and click it. And so we want to make sure that it's actually visible. So that's the check that we're doing here. And then from there, let me just delete this here. From there, if the button is found, then we're going to do this next action. If it's not found, we're going to send a failure notification. And you'll see here what we've got. It says 0 work test failed for this client, next button. So we're giving some sort of context in the subject so that when we get a bunch of these notifications into our inbox, we'll know, what project this was related to, and specifically like what was it that failed, right? And then in the email body, we have some detail. Next button on the first step is not working on KCSS quote request form. This way, when the team needs to go and investigate, they know, okay, we've got to look at the first step of this form, right? So we get enough detail in here to actually make it easier for our team to manage, right? If it's found, then all we're going to do is we're going to click on that same button. So these two steps here literally have the exact same selector. This selector is checking to see if it's visible, and it's the same selector here that we're using to click on that same button. Okay, that's just another click web element block here. And then from there, it's going to take us to the next step of the form. And in that next step here, let me just fill this out real quickly. This is the next step here, and you'll see we've got some radio buttons in here. So those are going to be treated a little bit different, not much, but let's just take a look at what that looks like, right? So once we click on the next button, which is down here, we come up to this one, which is the next step here, and we're going to click on a radio field. This is, again, the same click web element block. But when we go to grab the CSS selector, you don't want to choose, you don't want to right click on the actual radio button, because you'll see if you copy the CSS selector, it doesn't actually copy anything. You want to click on the label, right click on the label and copy the CSS selector, and you'll see that it highlights that option here. And that's what we need to use inside of here. So that's what we've put into that CSS selector here. And basically we're just doing that again for these 3 radio buttons. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going into these text boxes here. Now here it's asking for rooms, bathrooms, living rooms, etc. If you fill this out and just put in some test data here, you'll notice that when I get to kitchens, it expands this out to include more fields. So for this type of a process, we'd want to just keep it simple, right? So just make sure that you only in the, or putting in the data that would enable you to put in the least amount of data to complete the form, right? So that's what we're going to end up doing here, is recreating these inputs. So again, it's more of the same stuff. It's click on the field for bedrooms, type in text, and you'll see the type text that we're putting in here is going to be the number 1. Yep, there you go. And then if we look at kitchens, when we get to kitchens, right, we're clicking on the kitchens and then we're putting in the text of 0. That way we're not expanding that those extra fields that we don't really want to fill out, right? And then what we're doing here is once we get to the end of it, again, we're just checking to see if the next button is visible. So same thing, same step here. And then if we find it, if we don't find it, we're sending out another failure notification. If we find it, we're going to click on that button. The failure notification again says next button. But this time we're saying next button on the second step is not working, to give the team some context about where to look for that problem. And then we go into the next step here. And in this next step, again, we've got 2 radio buttons. If we choose yes here, you'll see we get extra options. So we're just going to click no to both of these fields here. And so that's what we're doing here. We're going radio field. We're checking the no option, and we're doing the same thing here, checking that no option. And then we're going to check for that next button again, and we're going to, if it's not visible, we're going to say it's not, the next button on the third step is not working. And if it is visible, we click on it and we go to the next step. So let's go to that now. So we've already done these types of inputs on the other steps, so I'm not going to redo these. The checkboxes are the same as the radio field, so you just right click, copy CSS selector like that. But we're going to look at this last one, which is this drop down box here. This is another one that we haven't done yet, so let's just take a look at that real quickly here. We're going to go to square footage. These are the check boxes here, and then this is the frequency. This is that last drop down here. So for that one, we're going to go to select web drop down. That's a different type of input. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put in the CSS selector here. And then for this drop down option, for all my web developers out there, we are not selecting the actual like value of the select box there. Like, so if you look at this select box, we're not using these values in here. We're using the actual text value that is displayed in here. So you want it verbatim exactly how it's displayed here. So we're going to go with monthly here. And so if we look at this drop down box here, that's the CSS selector, and we're choosing the option monthly, right? And then once we've done that, we're going to do a last check of that submit button. We're going to check to see if it's visible, right? We've got that checkbox check there. If it's not found, then we're going to go here and we're going to send another failure, but this time it's not next button, it's submit button. And we can say the submit button on the final step is not working. If it is working, we're going to click on that submit button, and then we're going to go to this next block here, and we're going to do this in a second here. I'm going to break this down for you, but there's actually 2 different ways that you can do this. These set of blocks here are actually just deactivated, just so I can show you the 2 different ways that you can do this. But let's actually just submit this, and I'll show you what this looks like. If we go to request estimate, this is going to take us to a thank you page, and you'll see that the URL has changed here. Now we've got finish in the URL, and we've got this thank you content here. So we can do this 2 ways, okay? If you have a form that redirects you to another page like this, we can check that the URL is the correct URL. If it doesn't redirect you to another page, in other words, it just kind of submits the form and displays a thank you message, we can use this option here where we're going to check to see if that thank you message is visible, and if it is, then we're going to process the rest of these steps here. So for the page URL option here, what we can do is just go to save page URL. Now you're going to need to have a variable set up or created to be able to save that page URL somewhere. So we're going to select variables here, and I already have a variable created called page URL. I created that. That's not a built-in variable. If you don't have one, you would need to click on create new variable here, and you would create page URL. This is exactly what I did. I just already have it set up here, right? So that's what you would do, and you would create a variable here, and then once you've got that created, you can select it like that. Okay, and that's how I've done it there. Once it's saved the page URL, we're going to need to basically do this conditional block here. The start condition and set condition blocks are a little bit like less intuitive. So I'm going to link the documentation here for this block here in the video. But basically you need to start a condition, and then you need to be able to add the set condition blocks here. And these are basically just different pathways depending on whether a value meets the criteria or not. So let me just show you what that looks like here. We're going to go to start condition here, and all we're doing here was just selecting the variable that we need to check the condition against. So in this case, it's just going to be the page URL. Okay, and then what we're going to do then is, and that, by the way, is this start condition block here. Now we're going to drag in a set condition block, and there's no limit to how many set condition blocks you can have for one. Let me just put in something here for one start condition. So a start condition could be, there's one start condition, but there could be any number of set condition blocks to that start condition. Hopefully that makes sense. But and basically what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, if whatever this is connected to, so this is going to be connected to that start. So that variable that's in this start condition, if it equals whatever this value is, then it'll do something. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're saying if it equals this URL here with the finish in it, we're just putting the entire URL. Okay, then we're going to save that, and then if it matches that, then we're going to send a success notification. If it doesn't match that, so this is just a does not equal, right? The top block was equal, this one is does not equal, same condition, this URL, then we're going to send out a failure notification, and we're just going to say the test failed. Thank you. The thank you page, we can say the thank you page is not working, right? And if it is working, then we say, it's a success. The quote request form is working properly, and so that way we get notified either way. So this is one way that you can do it. The second way that you can do it, and actually let's just demo this real quickly, and you can see what this looks like here. Let me just run this for you here. We're just going to click on run, and you'll see what's going to happen here is we're going to get a little Chromium browser initialized here, and the bot is going to start doing all those actions that we programmed into it. So it's going to click into each of these fields, type the text that we programmed into it, and by the time that it's done, it will process all the steps and check for any of those problems that we've coded into the workflow. So you see it's clicked on the next button, it's clicking on those radio buttons, it's filling out these room fields. There you go. It'll look for that next button and click on it, and it'll just click on no for these two, click next. It'll fill out these boxes here, and this is where all the magic happens, because we're going to check for that submit button, and if it finds it, it's going to click on it. It's going to get here, and I'm just going to kind of minimize this here for a second. You'll see it's going to get to this page here, and if we look at the bot here, you'll see that it's going to check. Now it's waiting for a certain amount of time here. I'm going to show you what that wait step looks like, because we do want to wait enough time to make sure that the form is actually submitting, right? Sometimes the form can take a little bit longer to submit than other times. And there you go. You'll see that it has saved the URL to the page URL variable. That is the URL that it saved. And then it checked the condition that this URL equals this value, which it did. And so it went to the success step here. So how did we do that wait step? Let's take a look at this last step before the save page URL. There is a min and max delay here. And if you look at this little tooltip, it'll tell you it's the delay. It delays the next action that follows after this building block by this amount of time. So we're waiting 15 to 30 seconds after we click the submit button before we continue on with the rest of these steps here. And so let me just show you real quickly here. There is the email confirmation that we just got. Zero work test success, KCS form working, and it just says the quote request form is working. So we get a notification into our inbox letting us know that it's succeeded. So that is the entire process there. Now, if you don't have a separate thank you page, let's say that this was the thank you message that gets displayed on that same page, we can do the exact same thing as this next workflow here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut off this connector here. I'm going to highlight all of these, and I'm just going to deactivate these blocks, and I'm going to go ahead and activate these ones, and we're just going to connect this up like this. And let me show you what this is going to do now. So after the submit button is clicked and it waits 15 to 30 seconds, it's going to go on to this next step here, which is all it's going to do is we've just selected a message to look for. So in this case, we're selecting this thank you heading here. So if we just right click on this and go to copy CSS selector, you're going to see it's going to highlight that. That's what we're going to check for. Now, if it was on the same page as this quote request form, like this quote request a quote URL, and it just got replaced with a thank you message, you would do the same thing. You would just right click on that message, copy the CSS selector, and then get that selector, okay? And you would paste that into here, and you're just going to say that it has to be visible on the screen again. And if it finds it, then it's going to send out a success. If it doesn't find it, it's going to send out a failure. That's pretty much all there is to it. So this is basically the way that you can go ahead and like automate. This doesn't take very long to set up for a client. I mean, if it's a simple form, like, you know, it's just first name, last name, email, and a message or something, like you can get this done in literally like 5 to 10 minutes. The beauty of this is that there are off-the-shelf solutions that you can buy that will test forms for you, but they're going to cost you anywhere between like $20 to like $50 a month for that testing. So you can easily resell this solution for like $30 a month to existing clients or new clients, or add it as a value add to your existing services to make your offer more enticing. And yeah, it's just a really, really good, easy thing to set up. So the way that you would do this as a service is you would just set up a virtual private server, have this all set up like you'd basically have, because there's a bot that has to run here. So when you do set up zero work, let me just kind of go back here, and you go into settings, there's a little desktop agent that you need to download and install. That's what actually initializes that Chrome browser to run all the steps. So if you install that desktop agent on a server, and on that server you just have it basically just set up zero work so that it's just running on a schedule, because you'll see that this workflow here that we just went through, if we go to edit scheduler here, we have it running every day at a specific time. And so this means that on the server that this is going to be running on, it's just going to continue to run this every single day and send it out to our team or to our client, whatever we decide to do, right? So really, really good solution. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. And if you like videos like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe for future videos.